Number 3 says there are 8 children and 2 tables in the classroom. If the same number of children sit at each table, how many children will sit at a table? So I'm going to write a setup equation to help me figure out whether this is multiplication or division. So if it's obvious to you, that's great, but if it's not, this is the way to start. In this case, I have tables and I have children. So that means that the second number in my multiplication is either going to be tables per child or children per table. And I think children per table makes more sense. So then by default, this has to be the number of tables. And then this will give me the total number of children. So if I know the number of tables and I know the number of children per table, I would multiply the number of tables times children per table to get the total number of children. And in this case, we know that we have 8 children. That's not per table, that's total. So I know that this would not be a question mark, this would be 8. And then I know that there's 2 tables. So I know this first number is a 2. And so then it's asking how many children will sit at a table. So it's asking for the number of children per table. So looking at my setup equation, this can help me figure out, if I didn't already know, how would I find this missing value? Well, if I'm trying to figure out 2 times what equals 8, I would divide 8 by 2. So this is going to be division, even though my setup is a multiplication setup. And then for the model on this one, right? So how can we figure this out? Well, you could use the setup equation if you remember this, right? So if you remember that if the missing value is the middle one, that means it's a sharing problem, right? If that's not clear yet, then we could go to our picture, right? Which is going to be our next step anyway. So this says there's 8 children and there's 2 tables, right? So I know I'm going to want to draw 8 children. I could just start with that. So I'm just going to do like little smiley faces. You can do stick figures or whatever you like. Here's my 8 children. And then I know I want to put them at 2 tables. Do I know how many go at each table? So I do not, right? If I'm being very careful about this, right? If I knew that, I wouldn't need to do the picture, right? So if I'm using the picture to come up with the answer, I don't know how many to put in each group, right? Now, hopefully this one's not too hard. Once you see all 8 of these, you could probably figure it out. But technically, I do not know how many to put in each group. So I've got my 2 tables here, right? And I don't know how many children to put at table number 1. And I don't know how many children to put at table number 2. So what I would do is I would just start assigning them. So I would say, okay, you are here, you're first in line, you go over to table 1. This person, you're last in line, you go over to table 2. And then it doesn't matter what order I go in here. So you right here, you go to table 1, and then let me send another one to table 2. You sit over here. All right, you go to table 1, you go to table 2, you go to table 1, you go to table 2, and then eventually I'm out of children, right? And so then I can count and see how many children do I have at each table. In this case, there are 4 children. You could just say 4 children. If you want to say 4 children per table, that's fine. So again, if you didn't know the model before, the fact that I wasn't able to put circles around these without actually knowing the answer first, right, would tell me that it's fairly sharing. Because if I knew how to make my groups, that would have been grouping. So this is my sharing or partitioning problem.